At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Randy, welcome to the show.
Hello, Doug. Good to be here with you.
Hey, I'm excited. This is going to be an interesting conversation. You know, you've written a book that I find has such an important element, and I'd like for you to share with the audience, number one, the name of the book, but even going back further than that, you know, you've done a lot of things. Tell a little bit about your background, and then what was that moment where you decided to write that book? What ultimately inspired that?
Okay, well, my background, I'm educated as a physicist, and I'm a mechanical engineer with multiple patents. Let's go back to 1989. I had multiple businesses, multiple multi-million-dollar businesses. I was successful, but I wasn't completely happy and fulfilled. And about that time, 1989, 35 years ago, I met a woman I spent 3 years with who opened my eyes to the spiritual, emotional side of life. 30 plus years later, I decided to write a book after I'm skipping a lot here. After a whole lot of lessons and a whole lot of insights and experiences, I wrote a book, The Third Element, which is all about how anybody here on a human path can understand the rules of the game of life better and can find ways to improve their life by making some small changes and by changing their approach to their thoughts, their actions, and their emotions.
And you do get into the law of attraction, don't you, a bit?
Well, my belief as a physicist, understanding resonance, understanding energy down to a subnuclear level, and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, it says that energy does not become matter until it's observed. And the law of attraction co-creates our reality with us. Every moment of every day, we walk into a new possibility, and we do that through the law of attraction. God has no rules for us, except when we respond from a place of love and caring, we find an answer a lot faster, a lasting answer.
Okay.
And the law of attraction. So there's no expectation, there's no judgment. He says, you go think whatever you want, and I'll reflect it back to you. You take what actions you want with your body and the world around you, and I'll reflect it back to you. And whatever emotions you have that you're feeling now or are left over, you didn't feel completely in the past, I will reflect all this back to you. And when you understand the rules, then we can guide our thoughts, guide our actions, and work through our old emotional wounds and create an amazing life. And that's what I've experienced. And that's why I wrote the book, is I want other people to be able to have a wonderful life too.
Well, and you know, it's interesting. You bring up two, I think, really important points. You know, I interviewed someone just yesterday, and we were talking about success. And I said, all right, I want a definition of success. And the whole story was extremely financially successful. All right, the cars, the house, the boat, whatever, but not happy. And you're kind of explaining the same thing here. You have multi-million-dollar companies. You're extremely, quote, successful, and yet you're not happy. And, you know, we get into the law of attraction, we get back to the original movie, The Secret. And I thought before we got on, I thought, you know what, I years ago, I had interviewed someone who I can't even remember, I apologize, that talked about the fact that they discovered after being involved in the movie, The Secret, that there were some other elements that had been missing. And so I actually went on ChatGPT this morning and I said, okay, what are some of the elements that are missing that the members of that movie have talked about since? And I got an incredible list of things that have to be added for someone, you know, because I think there's so many people that just sit and have their board up there and, you know, this is what they want to manifest, and yet they don't experience it. And I think you hit on one of the keys, because it did mention exactly what you're talking about, is the emotional part of that. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk about, you know, first of all, define spirituality for the audience, because everybody has different different definitions. So let's make sure we're at the correct groundwork here.
So to me, spirituality means embracing the part of our human experience that is of spirit. So when we say we are human beings, human to me being our human body, our human mind, and beings being that undefinable beingness that is a spark of divine consciousness. A part of our soul is a part of God, of all that is at the deepest level. And that is a part of our experience here. And for me, being the path of spirituality is seeking out to experience more of that higher, more pure part of us that's actually a part of God, the Creator. And to be a human being is a balance between the human separateness from all it is and the beingness of the embodiment of the love of all that is and the power of God in our soul that can come through us and be part of our human experience.
Okay, excellent. So here's my question. You're talking about emotions. I'd like for you to share and expand a little bit about why emotions are so important. And then we'll even get a little bit deeper on that. But let's talk about emotions, because I know that is something that you really focus on your book.
So I'm a very big believer in our thoughts and our actions as law of attraction. But to me, it's like a three-legged stool. I can sit on a three-legged stool and I'm fine. But if I take one of the legs away, I'm going to tip over. It's just not going to work. So everything in the universe fits into one of three categories: our thoughts, our physical world, or our emotions. And so when I was 28 years old and I was looking for success, I was educating myself and I was working hard because I only knew of two of the categories or elements of the human experience. Once I stumbled across an experience that where I healed an emotional wound and I saw the material world around me change clearly, and I made the connection, and then I experimented more with, okay, here's an outside irritation and I'm going to work with the emotion. And I saw the connection between emotional healing and the physical world changing. Then I made the correlation and I thought through it as a scientist would. And I came back to the law of attraction and sympathetic vibration, which means things that vibrate similarly are attracted to each other. So our thoughts have energy, our physical body and our actions have energy, and our emotions have energy. And that vibrational energy through harmonics interacts with the law of attraction. And the law of attraction then creates every moment of our day for us out of infinite possibilities.
Well, and I smile and kind of giggle a little bit because I think about how years ago, this whole concept of energy and frequency was kind of the woo, 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 woo. And yet now here I'm talking to you, a highly educated scientist. You've got Joe Dispenza, who really focuses on meditation, if you're aware of that. But he's got scientists behind him and doctors behind him that are doing major research and validating what he talks about. And so it's fascinating to me that all of a sudden something that we thought was kind of out there now has become a scientific valid point of that energy and how we put that out there. One of the questions that I have for you, though, and we'll get into this even more, is I remember in my dental practice, okay, I used to focus a small amount on people who had chronic pain, head and neck pain. And of course, at that point in time, the dental media called it TMJ, and temporal mandibular joint syndrome. And so someone would come into me and say, "Hey, doctor, I've got TMJ." And I'm going, "Oh, wait a minute. No, you have two. You've got one on the left side, you've got one on the right side. So tell me, what's your symptoms?" And once they told me the symptoms, I would discover that most of the time, it really didn't have anything to do with that joint. It had everything to do with the nerves. It had everything to do with the muscular relationship and that type of thing. So when we talk about emotions, and you bring up the point, and I think it's very valid, that emotions create that energy that create the law of attraction. The challenge is what's below those emotions, because all of a sudden I look at events and, I see that, in fact, it just happened to me just the other day, is, here's an event There's no emotion tied to an event. But I applied, based on my perception, an emotion to that event. And once I did that, it created all sorts of interesting experiences for me. So let's talk about a little bit about that. What are your thoughts about that, as far as what is the basis of those emotions?
So it is, in my opinion and from my experience, emotions are what you said. An event happens, our mind makes up a story about it, and that's done at a subconscious first brain level as well as in our conscious brain. Emotions are valid in the moment as part of our guidance. Now, some people say, oh, emotions are your guidance system. I want to clarify that. An emotion we feel in the moment we first feel it is a valid guidance towards something good or away from something bad. So we have the thought, we have the observation or experience, we have the thought, we make up a story, we have the emotional experience that then is designed to drive us towards that thing or drive us away from that thing. This is from before our prefrontal cortex evolved. And so I have this experience, say a bad experience, and I'm going to go away from this problem. And so that energy is designed to drive my body to take action. Well, now my brain gets involved and slows me down, and I'm looking around. Are people going to judge me for my actions? Is this the best thing to do? And the problem is the conscious thinking brain gets in the way of letting the emotion come through and be experienced and released. So if I feel 20, say I feel 80% of the emotion, but 20% of that energy that's designed to move me towards or away gets stuck in my being, in my body, in my energy field, whatever way. I can't describe that, but I know from my experience, energy's there. That energy wants to be released. It doesn't want to stay within me. And that energy, that last 20% of that emotional guidance message that's stuck in me is still vibrating. It's like storing gasoline in a metal can. If I store gasoline in a metal can for 20 years, I could pour it out and burn it, but I only have to burn it once and then it's gone. So emotions are bigger than time and space. The mind, let me slow down here. I'm trying to put it all together. Our thinking mind is never in the present moment. It's thinking of the past, it's thinking of the future. It's a stream of thought. And like music, it has to be played out over time. We can observe in a moment, but that's different than our thinking brain. So our thinking brain is never in the present moment now. Our body only exists in the now. And emotions are bigger than time and space. They know no time, but they have to be experienced through our physical body. So we store this emotion. It's in our energy field. It doesn't expire. It doesn't go away. And it continues to attract to us until we find a way to get a bodily feeling sensation to release it.
Well, and we talk about emotional intelligence, and we'll get into that a little bit, I hope. But again, I'm going to challenge you on something, and I may not be making myself clear. Okay, so I want to really get into this, because I look at emotions being a result of an event. So, for instance, something happens that triggers an emotion, and the reason that triggers a particular emotion may have to do with some imprint from my childhood that or in my life, that all of a sudden, and that's why I say I just had that happen the other day, where an event occurred and all of a sudden, boom, there I am. I'm not happy. And I'm looking at that and going, okay, wait a minute. What is the root cause of this? And I get back to an element in my past experiences where that remembrance of that triggered that emotion. And so that's what I'm trying to really have this discussion on, and your experience on that, because as we look to help people, we see those emotions coming up. But to me, the emotional intelligence is when you can see those emotions come up and go, okay, why that emotion, whether it's good or whether it's bad?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here.
Okay.
And what I'm going to say is, yes, we want to get it, we want to clear it. But my experience says I don't need to understand it completely to clear it, but I do need to feel it completely to release it. So I don't always get back clear to what it was I was thinking or feeling or what brought up that emotion for me. Sometimes I do, and that's fantastic. But even if I can't understand it with my brain, as long as I can feel the feeling that's telling me it wants to come through my body and be released. And for me, and I'll say this even as a man, a lot of times it's tears, even if it's a little tear, a little sadness, some frustration, whatever that is. If I can go for a walk, if I can hit a punching bag, sing in the forest, ride my dirt bike, and let that energy go, then my world changes. Not only do I feel better, but the irritation, the outside irritation, that's a gift. Yes, I said gift, to remind us of what we have to let go of. Then when we can embrace that gift, feel the feeling and release it, we don't need to understand it. Understanding can help. I agree with you on that part. But regardless, let that energy go, and then we don't need the gift of irritation.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is when that emotion comes up, if we're willing to acknowledge it and to accept it, that, hey, here's an emotion, but then let it go, particularly if
that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's letting it go.
Letting it go is the hard part, because our ego, that part of us that's human, that's here to protect us from picking up a piece of burning wood out of the campfire, also protects us from the pain of our past emotions. And that's the challenge with our ego, is it wants the problem. It wants to be a victim. Our ego wants to be important. That's part of the human experience. And yet at the same time, avoiding that emotional pain that we can feel and heal and release causes more problems for us as a personality and an ego. And so it's a contradiction, but that's the reason I didn't jump in and heal my emotions. That's why I avoided my emotions. They hurt. I didn't want to go there. I had pain. I had shame. I had disappointment. And when eventually I was able to release more and more, then my world improved in so many ways. And my business in 1989 was amazing. But after I started to apply spiritual principles to my business, then it grew 30 and 40 times to what it was when I was already successful. But that pain, we don't want to feel that. It's not a fun thing to do. The results are amazing, but the process is not fun.
Well, and as you talk about business and what I've experienced, and I'm sure you have too, is, whatever principles that you have experienced to improve your business, we talk about the business of life. And it's so interesting that principles that help us to be truly successful in a meaningful way in business are the very same principles that help us to be successful in the business of life and what we're doing.
I would agree with that. And if I can tangent for a moment, what helped me be successful in business is to be centered enough and calm enough and confident enough that I was capable, not from an ego point of view, but to understand as a leader, I'm capable of leading the group to success, and I'm capable of helping the members of my group find individual success. Then when I realized my power as a leader did not come from my title, it came from the success of my group, then I could be vulnerable, meaning I could admit when I made mistakes. I could help have other people help me make decisions. I could take responsibility for the mistakes of the group, even if it wasn't my fault, and create a safe place for them. I could share all the success and give credit for all the success to them. So as a leader, my position, of my ego at least, was absolutely secondary. These people want to do their best. They want to succeed. And when they know, I was going to say when they feel, but when they really know that I'm there to help them succeed and I'm there to serve them. As a leader, I'm not here to be served. I'm here to serve. Then they're like, oh, Randy's on my side. He's going to take care of me. I'm on board. Let's make this happen. And when you get a group of 2 or 3 or 100 or 1,000 people, 1,000's pretty tough to accomplish that with. When you do it with 100 people, and now they know Randy's here to take care of me and we're going to win this together, then even though I'm vulnerable, I'm more respected and I'm more appreciated, and they feel appreciated, and they produce, and we have a winning team. And that's how I was able to produce the success in business. It wasn't through me, it was through my team wanting to succeed and knowing they could show up as themselves without having to put on a facade.
Well, and let's talk about ego. Eckhart Tolle wrote a number of books about ego, and what I find when we talk about emotional intelligence, how much of being able to acknowledge and literally be aware of our ego and recognize that there's a very important aspect of our ego, a good one, but also it can take us down a path that's not very healthy. And how do you equate the emotional intelligence of an individual with how they're able to be aware of and acknowledge that ego and recognize when it's going in a direction of, oh, I have to have this, I have to have that, this is making me important, now I feel important, rather than recognizing that it's just a healthy thing to understand spiritually of who you are?
I think a person's words give them away a lot when they talk about me or I rather than we. When they use the word you, except in a place of praise. I stopped using the word you when I talk to somebody, except when I'm praising 30 years ago, because people get defensive when we say you. And if we're talking about success, I need to say we. And that's a good indicator. It's not foolproof, but that's a good indicator of, is the leader looking to be important, or is the leader looking to be of service to their group and humanity? And the only way that I can really find fulfillment is to connect with the people that I lead. Otherwise, there's a separation. And we're not here on this planet to be separate from each other. Now, there's some people I want to be separate from. There's some toxic people. I want to set some boundaries with some certain people. But if I'm working with the right group of people, whether it's in my neighborhood, whether it's at work, then I want to connect with them. I want them to feel acknowledged by me. I want them to feel they're contributing to the cause. And I want them to feel they belong to the group like they would belong to a family. And when I can accomplish those three things, the acknowledgement, the sense of contribution, and sense of belonging, they show up completely differently. And it's a deeper experience for all of us. Now, that's not just about a deeper experience. Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's, to me, that's really freaking important. But at the same time, that deeper experience that I had with the people I worked with, that created financial success. And we can have personal relationships and deep connections with the people we work with and still be respected and achieve even greater financial success. And that's kind of ironic, but that's what I find to be the truth. And leaders are afraid of the same thing I was afraid of. When we become vulnerable, when we show up compassionate and caring, then people might not respect us. That was my fear.
Okay, so I want to move away from business. I want to get to personal, okay? Because you keep talking about business and financial success. Let's talk about, quote, leaders of our own life, maybe as parents, leaders of our family. And as you mentioned, in a community, as we're doing that, because let's look at what's going on right now. When we talk about emotions, look at what's happening in the US right now. I mean, the anger, the frustration, all of that is just destroying the healthiness of the country to such a large degree. But let's take that down to the personal level. As a parent, how do I, as a parent, lead my children and be with them to help them to grow up in a more productive, emotionally healthy way? And as I'm in a group of people, friends, neighborhood, and so forth, what do we do in order to do that? How do we help people to really become a leader within their own life? Forget the business, because not everybody owns a business. You know, a lot of people are just working for someone else, right, which is good.
And I apologize for getting off track, but I understand your question.
Yeah, okay.
Extreme, and I talk about this, I think it's in chapter 6 of the book. Extreme self-responsibility, meaning my reality is created for me in response to who I am, and therefore I have zero reason to blame anybody. And so as soon as we find ourselves blaming our circumstances, the weather, our neighbor, somebody we work with, our spouse, as soon as we start to blame and want to change something outside of ourselves, that is an indicator that we're off track.
And it's an indicator that the energy, as you talked about at the beginning, the energy that we're putting out there is attracting the energy back. So our life experiences are basically a result, to a large degree, of who we are. I always come up with the saying when we talk about spirituality, did he do what he did in order to become, or did he do what he did because he was? And I think that's so important for people to understand that, you know what, our experiences in life to a large degree, obviously once in a while some things happen that are totally out of our control, and I don't believe that we attracted that, but for the most part our life experiences are a result of who we are and the energy that we put out, and that's kind of what you were talking about, right?
Yes. And so we are the only one who can truly affect our life. Yes, things happen to us from the outside, but if we didn't cause that to happen and it appears to be random, our response does not have to be random. Our response is up to us. So we have the ability to respond. Responsibility means the ability to respond. So I have the ability to choose what I'm going to think when something happens to me, what I'm going to do in response, and how I'm going to feel or how I'm going to process through the emotions that are reactivated. And when I become aware, and this has took me a long time to get to, when I became aware that everything in my life is for my growth and is a gift for growth and a gift for learning, then when something happens to me, I can say, wait a minute, don't get angry, don't be upset, don't blame. How do I recognize the gift in this situation? So when parents blame, their children learn to blame and feel like they don't have any power over the situation. But when parents can say, okay, there's a gift here and I'm going to make the best of this, then their children will learn to make the best of every situation that comes along, even if it's ugly. Even the ugly things that happen to us are an opportunity for learning. And when we get to that point of faith, a tipping point where we've done it so many times that we know, okay, I can look at this from a place of optimism, and I can say there's a good lesson in here. And when we do that enough times, it becomes natural. And when we look for the positive lesson, I find it every time. I don't always like where I find it, but I find the positive lesson every time when I take that approach.
Well, and I think that's so important. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think for people to understand that, you know what, life happens. But as you say, it's the response that we have control over. And getting back to something we were talking about a little bit earlier, when people find themselves in a sense of they're just constantly angry, I notice that a lot on Facebook. A number of people that I've known for years, all of a sudden, wow, every post that they make has an element of anger, an element of frustration. And, as you look at, and I don't know how much you get into the emotional scales, but, as I look at the Hicks emotional guidance scale, which I love, and looking at the fact that anger, irritation, frustration is below that healthy line, how do people, in your experience, overcome that? And number one, I guess, be aware of the fact that, wow, I'm constantly angry, and acknowledge that. But secondarily, how do they ultimately start to move up that spiral to where at least there's contentment and maybe even hopefulness, and then ultimately joy and freedom? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first place to start is understanding. When we understand that our reality is created by us and our responses to everything around us, then it also helps to realize that when we're 4 years old and we complain and cry and blame, somebody takes care of us. And maybe they still do when we're 15, and maybe they still do when we're 25. But when we become a grown adult, if we hang on to those behaviors we learned when we were younger, they don't help. So first we have to be aware of our own behavior. We have to be aware that the law of attraction is here to serve us, not in a bad way, just as a simple reflection. So the understanding of our bad behavior and our wrongful approach, incorrect approach, ineffective approach. I don't want to use words that are judgmental, but I want to be discerning and say, when I blame and I get angry, it's not going to help. And then if I understand, okay, yeah, it feels good to blame in the moment, but that's not moving my life forward. And I understand that the law of attraction is here to respond to my good thoughts and my good actions, and respond to my gratitude. Gratitude is a great, great cheat code, and respond to those more positive emotions. And then my mind says, I've had enough of the negative me. This isn't working. I want to try something different. a person has to come to that place where they make a choice and they make a decision to try a different approach. And if they never come to that decision, they're going to live their life in misery. And God's patient. God will give them 1,000 or 10,000 lifetimes of that to figure it out. But the moment we say, this isn't working and I'm going to try something different, and if they read the book, I outline it in a way that makes good sense and gives people some light at the end of the tunnel to be willing to take a different approach. And so, again, it's awareness of our bad behavior and awareness and education about how the law of attraction really works.
Well, and you mentioned gratitude, and I think that's so essential. But I think for a lot of people, that can be really difficult to express gratitude when they're experiencing something that is not necessarily on the surface something you can be grateful for. So as you have written in your book, how do people begin to develop a sense of gratitude even in those situations where it's kind of difficult to figure that out?
That's a place where we kind of have to fake it till we make it. But in gratitude, if we're intending to find something positive, and we can start out going, okay, I live in a shitty neighborhood, but at least I got a house. And the weather, it's raining, but at least I'm not flooded. And my hot water heater's not working, but at least I have water. Okay, now those are negatives that are kind of, the inverse is a little bit positive. If we can start to tiptoe, baby step towards the positive, we're setting the intention. And even if we do a bad job of being grateful, we're setting the intention, and the law of attraction will get behind our intention. And even if we're not wholeheartedly finding things to be grateful for, we're stepping into new territory. And the law of attraction is just patiently waiting for us to look for more positive things. And we find what we go looking for. And even if I'm cynical when I start down that path, I started down the path and I set the intention to find things to be grateful for. And my experience says it just takes one step at a time in the right direction, even if I'm not doing it wholeheartedly. And the entire universe will get behind me and support me on my intent to find something to be grateful for. And the power of gratitude is incredibly strong.
Well, and it's fascinating. As I mentioned, as I did a little research, the first thing that comes up, and you just talked about it, is aligned action. So we have that attraction, but then we put in that aligned action. And I think that that's so important. And the other thing, I don't know how much, with your experience and background scientifically, that as we, and I like how you talked about it, even as we try hard to show positive gratitude, and sometimes that can be very difficult, but as we continue to do that, what happens, if you're aware of it, what happens to the neurological pathways in our brain to the point that all of a sudden, everything that occurs, the first thing that comes up is, what can I be grateful for?
Our pathways are wired to repeat what rewards us. Now, ego, like Eckhart Tolle says, the pain body wants to complain, and it gets the instant reward of feeling important. But if we find a place we can feel gratitude, something we can feel gratitude about, the law of attraction, the universe will bring us something else to feel grateful for. And that will amplify over time. And then when we're rewarded by positive thoughts and positive actions, and by feeling some gratitude, and we see a positive response in our life, then our brain will automatically rewire and say, positive outcome came from this positive input. It automatically makes those connections for us, whether we're aware of it or not. But we just have to start down that path of taking action towards being optimistic and towards seeing the good in things. It starts with intent.
And I think even affirmations, as we continue to do that in a positive way, we start to create new neurological pathways that ultimately change that law of attraction, as you say, because it changes the energy within us. When I went onto your LinkedIn site, I found a quote that I just loved, and I want to read it here for the audience, please, and then have you comment on it. You say, the energy you carry speaks louder than your mindset ever will. What was behind that, and what are you trying to say there?
Well, okay, so speed of light is really fast. It'll go around the earth 7 times in 1 second. pretty fast, but it still takes 8 minutes to reach from the sun to us. Emotions are bigger than time and space. They're not bound by time and space. So when we feel something, the entire, all that is, this universe and every universe out there at some level gets that message instantly. The moment we feel something through kind of interpretation of string theory, where everything's just a vibration at the smallest level, there are no speed limitations to that. And so the emotions that we carry, good, bad, or otherwise, we're feeling in the moment, the energy of that is transmitted everywhere all the time. So if I walk into a room, now it's appropriate for people to interact with me at an energetic level because they want to be aware of who I am. I'm closer to them. They're going to be talking to me or avoiding me or whatever that might be. And so everybody feels everything at some level. But when you and I are in the same room, suddenly we're feeling each other more. And we look, is Doug making eye contact? Is Randy making eye contact? Is he smiling? Is he look grouchy? And I'm looking with my mind and my eyes and my mind to assess the situation. But our aura, our energy field walked into that room before our physical body did. And it's the same way with the law of attraction. The law of attraction feels our energy field and our emotions before we even take action on those emotions. And so it's like a radio signal that goes out ahead of us, and it's a radio signal that's faster than the speed of light. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I like the fact that you talk about when we walk into a room, we put out an energy that can be so positive or in many respects negative, and people pick up on it immediately. And as you think about that, and as we talk about the law of attraction, as we talk about creating within ourselves that positive synchronicity, that positive element and energy, what happens if we continually surround ourselves with people or media that is always negative? What happens to us?
It drags us down. It's like taking a beautiful tuning fork, a beautiful instrument, and throwing a wet towel over it. It stops vibrating at a beautiful harmonic. It stops vibrating at the frequency we intend. So those negative thoughts that we have, negative stories we observe, and negative people we interact with, that dampens the beauty within us that wants to shine through.
So what do we do? What do we do to avoid that so that we can literally create within our mind and create within our energy that positive aspect to really experience that sense of joy and freedom and love?
We set the intention. We learn to say no to the people and the things that drag us down or can drag us down. We become aware of our own negative emotions we're hanging on to through journaling or whatever that might be, and work through them through breath work. And we remove ourselves from the negative, and then we outside of ourselves. We remove ourselves from the negative of the outside world. Then we become aware of the negative emotional energy within us, not because we're going to amplify it, but because we're going to identify it, find a modality to work through it, like breathing or tapping or some exercise to work through it and release it. And when we release that negative energy within us, love fills that space immediately. Then it makes it easier to attract to us good news. It makes it easier to attract to us happier, more positive people. So we say no to the outside negativity. We embrace and release the inside negativity, and law of attraction will guide us to more positive things without us even having to try.
So in your book, you get into meditation, you get into tapping, you get into breathing as a particular element of how to start to eliminate those negative emotions.
Yes, I have 14 different exercises in chapter 7. And I also share on my website, randylyman.com, and the how-to. I share some of the practitioners I work with today still, whether it be for massage or hypnotherapy or chiropractic, whatever it might be, to allow energy to come through my body. And there are several modalities. It's different for everybody. I cannot sit still and meditate. I can ride my dirt bike at 50 miles an hour in the rough desert, and I'm calm and I'm clear and beautiful information comes to me, but I can't sit still. Everyone is different. So I've shared a lot of different things that work for me and work for my friends. And I just tell people, find what will help your mind stay occupied while the deeper peace can find a way through.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, it's walking meditation. I'm like you to sit there for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, can't do it, but I can walk for 3 miles for an hour. And with meditative music in there, I can literally experience an amazing meditation. And so I love what you talk about there that, but, and again, you talk about different tools, and I really appreciate that you put that in there, because I think for people, as you know, one tool will work for one person that won't work for another person. And for you to have that in your book of tools of how they can literally start to achieve that, I think is really important and essential. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. We're all different. So two of the things I included, one is dance. I can't dance. I have no rhythm, but some people, they really can express through dance. And singing, I can't sing, but some people to sing, it just helps them connect. And so a friend of mine told me 30 years ago, if we can find God or higher experience through beer and pizza, great. God doesn't care. We shouldn't care. As long as we can find a way to find more peace and find more centeredness, do what works.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, as we come to a close, what would be that message that you really ultimately want the audience to understand?
Every one of us is a spark of the divine source. Every one of us is beautiful inside. Every one of us deserves an amazingly beautiful, successful, healthy life. Now that comes in a lot of different shades, but anybody who's starting to visualize, can it be better for me? My answer is yes, it can. Find a way to love yourself, work through your emotional blocks with the intent of life getting better, and the universe will jump in and support you and help you move in that direction. You're worth it. You're deserving. You're loved.
Great. So we've talked about it, but let's kind of reference it one more time here near the end. How do people find you, and how do people find your book?
So they find my book, The Third Element, through typical online booksellers. I can't say names because that doesn't always go over well depending on the platforms you're on. But through my website, randylyman.com, they can find links as to where to buy the book. They can find links to free offers that I have, free workbooks that I offer, tapping meditations. So on my website, randylyman.com, again, I offer a lot of things that are free. This is not about making money for me. This is about helping people find their power, finding ways to improve their life, and for the world becoming a better place.
Well, and it goes to the whole point of this podcast is making a difference in other people's lives. And, if we could all get to the point where you are, as you said, where, I'm not here to make money, I'm here to make a difference in someone's life. I think that becomes so essential. And if we could learn to pay that forward and always do that, I think that would make such a change in the world, don't you?
Absolutely. I agree 100%, Doug.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen, Randy, thank you so much. This has been great. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's been fun being on. Your questions are fantastic. I love your work.
Appreciate it. And folks, thanks for listening. Hope you'll join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.